The envelope is already open when Isabelle walks through the door. Not on the table, not resting against the lamp where someone with decency would leave it. On the floor, like it had been slid under, like she was a stranger being served notice on a lease she did not know had expired. She does not pick it up right away. She stands in the doorway of the penthouse in her soaked dress, rain dripping off the hem onto the marble, and she looks at it. One white envelope. Nathan Cole written across the top flap in his own handwriting, which means he did not even have his assistant do it. He wrote her name himself and still left it on the floor. She had just come from the Meridian Grand, their gala, the one she spent 3 months organizing. She had been standing at the entrance in the rain, waiting for Nathan's car, when the doors opened and he walked out with Alexis on his arm, in the dress Isabelle had seen hanging in a garment bag in the coat room 2 hours earlier and thought nothing of. He did not stop, he did not look at her. His driver held the door, they got in, the car pulled away. Isabelle stood there until the tail lights disappeared. Now she is here. The envelope is on the floor. She picks it up and slides out the single page inside. Nathan's signature. A date. Legal language that takes 47 words to say the same thing his silence said all night. He is done. Hi viewers, I need to ask you something before we go any further. If the person who was supposed to protect you publicly humiliated you and then left paperwork on the floor, what would your next move be? Drop it in the comments right now and subscribe, because what Isabelle does next will change everything. She folds the paper once. She slides it into her coat pocket. She does not cry. She opens her laptop. There is a photograph on Isabelle's phone that she has never deleted. Nathan at 28, sitting on the floor of a half-empty office in the South Loop, eating a gas station sandwich at 11 at night. No chairs yet. No furniture. Just a laptop, a whiteboard covered in marker, and a stack of folders that represented everything he had borrowed to get there. She had taken the picture without him noticing. He was too focused on the whiteboard to look up. That was the version of Nathan she married, not the one with the towers and the tailored suits, the one on the floor with the sandwich. She had believed in him when the numbers were bad. She had sat with him at that same kitchen table, the folding one they used for 3 years before they could afford a real one, and helped him map the company's first 3 years of strategy. She had noticed the clause in his vendor agreements that was losing him money. She had rewritten his pitch for the second investor round in a single night because he froze and she did not. None of that was ever in a contract. None of it was ever on paper, because she trusted him and trust felt like enough. She built the foundation of Cole Industries with her mind and her time and 12 years of quiet, uncompensated work. Nathan stood on that foundation and let the world believe he built it alone. She is not bitter about it tonight. She is clear-eyed about it. If you have ever poured yourself into someone else's dream and been left out of the credit, share this story. Someone in your life needs to see it. That is not a coincidence. That is a sign. The laptop is open. She knows exactly where to look. 6 months before the gala, Nathan changed his phone password for the first time in 9 years. Isabelle noticed. She did not say anything. She had learned in the last 2 years that the things Nathan did not explain were more informative than anything he said out loud. She noticed other things too. He started wearing a different cologne without mentioning it. He stopped coming home for dinner on Tuesdays. He began answering emails in the bathroom at midnight with the door locked, which he had never done before because he had always been the kind of man who worked at his desk or not at all. She tracked none of it in a journal. She did not confront him. She simply watched, the way she had always watched, quietly, without announcement, and she filed it away. Then Alexis Vane arrived at Coal Industries on a consulting contract. Isabelle met her once, a charity breakfast 3 months ago across a room full of people. Alexis was 29, sharp-jawed, articulate in the way of someone who had studied how rooms work and practiced how to own them. She greeted Isabelle warmly. She used her first name 3 times in a 60-second conversation. Later that night, Nathan said, very casually, that the new consultant was doing strong work, reorganizing some of the offshore vendor structures, very detail-oriented. Isabelle had smiled and said that sounded useful. She had also, without knowing why yet, remembered the name. Alexis Vane. Offshore vendor structures. She did not know what those words would mean in 4 months, but she stored them the same way she stored everything, carefully, without ceremony, in a place she could find them again. She finds the clause at 2:49 in the morning. The prenuptial agreement is 41 pages long. She has never read it in full. She signed it 12 years ago on the morning of the rehearsal dinner because Nathan's attorney slid it across a restaurant table, and Nathan said it was standard, and she trusted him, and love felt like the only document that mattered. Tonight she reads every word. She almost misses it. Section 14, subsection C, second paragraph, a financial rights clause that Nathan's legal team inserted and never discussed. The language is dense and specific. She reads it 3 times. If the non-owning spouse can demonstrate documented intellectual contribution to the company's foundational strategy during the marriage period, and if that contribution was not formally compensated, the non-owning spouse holds a right of claim against a percentage of evaluated company growth from the date of marriage. Her hands are completely still on the keyboard. She does not think about what this means emotionally. She thinks about what it requires: documentation, emails, strategy memos, board notes, early investor communications. She pulls up the archive folder she has kept since 2012. Every email, every draft, every version of every document she ever touched that had Nathan's name on the outside and her thinking on the inside. 47 folders, thousands of files. She picks up her phone and calls Margaret Chen. It is 3:17 in the morning. Margaret picks up on the second ring. She is already awake. She always is. "I need you," Isabelle says. "Not tomorrow, tonight." Silence, then, "Send me everything. I will call you in an hour." Isabelle sends the clause. She sends the archive. She sends the prenup. Then she sits back and waits. Margaret Chen calls back at 4:22 a.m., and the first thing she says is not good news. The clause is real and it's enforceable. Your documentation is strong, stronger than most cases I see after 22 years. But Isabelle, I need to tell you something before we go any further. Isabelle grips the phone tighter. "Tell me." "I pulled Nathan's current corporate filings while I was reviewing yours. There's a vendor account, Meridian Offshore Consulting, that's processed close to $18 million over the past 3 years. It's not in any filing I can find that predates Alexis Vane's contract start date." The name lands like a stone in still water. "Meaning," Isabelle says, though she already feels the shape of the answer. "Meaning if that account was set up during or because of Alexis's involvement, and if Nathan signed off on it without full disclosure to the board, your divorce case just became something much larger than a prenup claim." Isabelle is quiet for 3 full seconds. "How much larger?" "Federal level larger. Potential financial fraud. Which means the moment we file your claim, regulators are going to start pulling threads you and I cannot control. Nathan could face an investigation that has nothing to do with you, and any attorney on his side is going to see your filing as the trigger. She pauses, then she says the part that costs her something to say. Isabelle, I need you to understand, if we proceed, I will be the most visible person standing across from Nathan Cole's legal team. My firm will feel that. I want you to know I'm telling you this and I'm still taking the case, but you needed to hear it. The rain has stopped outside. The apartment is silent. I know, Isabelle says quietly, and I needed to hear that too. She touches the key pendant at her throat, one breath. Set the meeting. Before Margaret files a single document, Isabelle opens the third folder. She had not planned to go looking for Alexis. She had been searching for Cole Industries' vendor history, routine documentation work, when Alexis's name appeared in a transaction record from 2021. Then again, in 2022. A third time attached to a shell entity called Harrow Capital Group. She searches Harrow Capital Group. It does not exist as a registered business anywhere in the United States. She searches Alexis Vane. What she finds takes her breath away, not because it is dramatic, but because it is so precise, so deliberate, so clearly the work of someone who had done this before. 2 prior companies, Ridgefield Partners in 2018, Caulfield Logistics in 2020. Alexis had worked at both on short-term consulting contracts. Both had experienced significant unexplained fund movements within 12 months of her departure. Both had launched internal investigations. Neither resulted in charges because the documentation trail in both cases was immaculate, redirected through enough layers that the money moved cleanly, and the paper moved cleanly, and the only thing left was a shape, a pattern, a method. The method was identical to what Isabelle was looking at right now, in Nathan's vendor accounts. Alexis had not fallen in love with Nathan Cole. She had selected him. She had walked into Cole Industries the same way she had walked into the 2 companies before it, not because of what he felt, but because of what he controlled. The affair was not the reason she was there. The affair was the access, the warmth, the reason a careful man stopped reading what he was signing. Nathan had not been betrayed by a younger woman who stopped loving him. He had been a target, and he had handed her everything she needed because he confused flattery for truth. Isabelle closes the laptop. She picks up the phone and calls Margaret. I need to add something to the meeting agenda. The meeting is called as a divorce mediation session. Standard language, 38th floor, 4 p.m. Thursday. Nathan arrives with 2 attorneys and the posture of a man who thinks this will be expensive but manageable. He sits at the head of the table out of habit. He does not look at Isabelle when he walks in. Then he sees David Park. David Park is Cole Industries' senior compliance officer. 9 years at the company. For the last 2, he had been flagging anomalies in the offshore vendor accounts and being told by Nathan's CFO that they were under review. They were never reviewed. He had called Isabelle 3 days ago, not at her invitation, because David Park was not the kind of man who waited for permission to do what he knew was right. Nathan stops walking when he sees him. Then he looks at the folders on the table. He sits down. His face does not break, but his jaw sets in a way Isabelle has seen before, the way it does when something is beyond recovery. Margaret does not waste time. She presents the prenup clause. Nathan's lead attorney challenges it immediately. Margaret places Nathan's own 2013 signature in front of him, and the room goes quiet. Then she slides the Meridian offshore documents across the table. The shell entity, $18 million, the Harrow Capital connection, Alexis Vane's name threaded through filings Nathan had signed without reading. Then David Park opens his folder and speaks for 11 minutes without interruption. When he finishes, one of Nathan's attorneys puts down his pen. Nathan's hands are flat on the table, still, and the look on his face is not anger or defiance. It is a man watching his entire understanding of the last 2 years rearrange itself in real time. He had not been leaving Isabelle for someone better. He had been selected, studied, used. Nathan asks for a recess. His attorneys step into the hallway. David Park stays. Nathan walks to the windows, his city, his towers, his name on 3 of those buildings. He stands there and does not move. Isabelle does not look away. She watches his shoulders, the stillness that comes after something collapses. He turns around and looks at her, the way he used to, without performance, without the careful distance he had been using to feel justified. "I didn't know," he says. "Not the accounts, not the structure, not any of it. She told me the offshore routing was a tax strategy. I signed because I trusted her." The word trust lands strangely in the room. Isabelle keeps her voice level. "Nathan, the federal unit will reach these same documents within 3 to 6 weeks. David has already started the audit. Whether you get ahead of this or wait for them to come to you, that is the only decision that matters right now." "My client," one of his attorneys begins from the doorway. "Has 3 weeks," Margaret says, not unkindly, just finally. The room empties. Nathan is the last one left. He pauses at the door just long enough for it to be something, then walks out without looking back. Isabelle exhales. She reaches up and touches the gold key pendant at her throat, holds it there. Then she picks up her folder, slides it into her bag and stands. She walks out with her back straight and her hands steady, and the door closes behind her with barely a sound. Alexis Vane retains a criminal defense attorney within 48 hours of the boardroom meeting. She does not call Nathan. She does not call anyone connected to coal industries. She goes dark, no social media, no public appearances, no response to press inquiries, and enters that particular silence of someone calculating what can still be saved and finding the math does not work. The federal financial inquiry opens 16 days later. 2 offshore accounts are frozen within the week. A third traces back to a real estate transaction in Miami that predates Alexis's coal industries contract by 14 months, which means she had not improvised. She had planned. She had chosen Nathan Cole before she ever walked through his front door. Nathan cooperates fully. He had made the call the morning after the boardroom meeting before his attorneys could talk him out of it. He repays the diverted funds. He restructures the board. He discloses everything David Park identified and several things David Park had not yet found. Then, on day 31, Nathan's lead attorney files a countermotion. It arrives at Margaret's office at 7:14 in the evening. A technical challenge to the intellectual contribution clause, an argument that Isabelle's documented work fell outside the compensable window by a margin of 11 days. 11 days. That was all they had left to fight with, and they were using it. Margaret calls Isabelle at 7:22. "It will not hold," Margaret says, "but it delays. We are looking at 72 hours minimum before a judge rules it out." Isabelle is standing in her kitchen. She has not eaten. She sets down her glass and looks out at the city. 72 hours. She thinks about the first night, the envelope on the floor, the 41 pages she read in the dark, the call at 3:17 in the morning. 12 years of files she kept not because she planned to use them, but because she was the kind of woman who kept things. And now every single one of those files was sitting in a courthouse, waiting to answer 11 days' worth of doubt. Then we wait, she says, no anger, no panic, none of the urgency Nathan's team had been counting on. 72 hours later, the countermotion is dismissed. The divorce settles on day 39. Isabelle receives $44 million, calculated to the dollar by the clause in Section 14, subsection C, applied to coal industry's documented growth from 2012 forward. Not a settlement figure negotiated in desperation. A mathematical outcome of something that had always been true. She asks for one more thing. She asks Nathan to issue a formal statement acknowledging that coal industry's foundational growth strategy was jointly developed. No monument, no ceremony, just the record corrected. He agrees the same day. She moves into a 3-bedroom apartment in Chicago, floor-to-ceiling windows. Morning light on the kitchen table at 7 a.m. She cooks breakfast. She reads at night. She does not fill the space with noise or furniture she does not need or company she does not want. Some nights the quiet is still too quiet. Some mornings she picks up her phone out of habit and there is no one to text. Healing is not a destination. It is a practice, done slowly in ordinary rooms on ordinary days. She is not finished. But she is herself, completely and without waiting for anyone to confirm it. And that is more than enough to begin. Here is what Isabelle's story is really about. Not revenge. She never wanted revenge. It is about a woman who spent 12 years being the foundation of something, was told by silence and absence and finally by a piece of paper on a floor that she did not count, and decided that was not the truth. She did not make that decision loudly. She made it at 2:49 in the morning by reading every word of a document she had trusted someone else to explain. She made it by keeping files no one told her to keep. She made it by walking into a room and letting the documents speak louder than her pain. The most powerful version of yourself is not the one that reacts. It is the one that prepares. If you have been dismissed by someone who was supposed to protect you, this story is for you. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? I want to see every single one of you. Have you ever had to find your strength in a moment when everything in you wanted to go quiet? Share it below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs today. And tell me, what moment of Isabelle's hit you hardest? If you believe truth is always worth the fight, subscribe. We tell stories like this every week. The most powerful rooms are the ones where the truth is finally allowed to stand.